Have you grouped your plants together to create that lush jungle look? I certainly have. It looks beautiful, but it might not be as harmless as it seems. In fact, it could be slowly killing them. I'm seeing the consequences of this right now, and I'll spill the beans in this video, along with a bunch of other examples of why your plant decor might be secretly working against you, and what to do instead. So you might have noticed that I've got a lot of plants. Well over 200 in fact. It's great, I do love them, but there are challenges that I often face. The challenge comes from the fact that most of them are grouped too close together, and if you've got a collection of 5 or so that are grouped on a windowsill or console table, then you're at risk of seeing the same problems as me. Let's take this corner down here as an example of problem number 1. I've got this Califea next to this philodendron. The philodendron is looking rough as houses, isn't he? A closer look at this leaf reveals a dark truth: spider mites. If you're not familiar with spider mites, then they're the work of the devil. They literally suck the soul from your plants. Well, maybe not literally, but they do suck the sap from the leaves, eventually bringing about its downfall. The problem is worse because I found the same problem on the Califea. So it's clear to me that one has infected the other, and my money is on the Califea being the carrier, because he was the latest addition to my household. When plants are sat so close together like this, it just makes it easy for the bug army to spread and conquer. But that's not the only worry. Poor airflow is another problem. Poor airflow means your little fellas are at high risk of mould and fungal issues, with stagnant air being the perfect starting point for nasty things like mildew. On top of that, sap-sucking insects love to hang out in stinky, mouldy dives, so it's like a vicious circle. I know plants look great muddled in together, but try to keep some space in between them, particularly not allowing the leaves to touch if you can. Now, this next decor plant health conundrum is particularly tricky, and one I'm always struggling with. It's also potentially the most damaging. Have a look at Jim here. Jim is a Monstera Thai constellation, and subscribers to the channel will know all about his journey with me. I bought him from Amazon of all places, and he's blossoming into a big beautiful specimen I'm super proud of. But he might have a problem. You see this latest leaf? It's pretty much all green. The starry variegation seems to have gone by the wayside, and it's got me all worried. And I know exactly why this is happening. You see, I'm focused too much on how he looks in my conservatory and not enough on giving him the best light. To keep variegation going, plants need lots of good light. If they've not got enough, then they start sending out all green leaves to compensate. But this leaves me in a quandary because just look at the size of him. If I were to put him up against the window, then he'd take up half the room. This is always something I'm battling myself with, finding the balance between a plant looking great in a particular spot and whether that spot has enough light. When a plant is looking gloomy, most of the time it's down to how much light his solar panels can soak up. I mean, this money tree is nowhere near a window, but he looks just perfect in this spot. Naughty, aren't I? And then we have this. This is the epitome of form over function, and truthfully I should be arrested. Basically, this spot above the TV looked empty, and how does anybody with a plant YouTube channel solve that? Yeah, by installing a massive shelf for plants to sit on and get nowhere near enough light. It looks great, but I know long term, him and him are going to end up hating me. So if you can, do what I struggle to do and think about how much light the plant wants before thinking about the decor. If you can't, then consider adding a couple of Sansi grow lights to help out. Their details are linked in the description, along with a very juicy 25% discount. Now, this next decor problem might risk alienating a lot of my viewers. In a couple of recent videos, I've advocated doing this, a nice layer of decorative stones on top of the soil. Now, this has a couple of benefits. First, it helps retain moisture for longer, useful if your house is particularly warm and dry. And second, it smartens up the appearance of the plant no end. But there is a problem that has only recently dawned on me, and it's all to do with watering. My usual approach to watering is to pick up the pot and feel how light he is, and yours might be to stick your index finger in and give everything a little wiggle. Both of these approaches are much harder when there is an inch layer of stones on the soil. It's now quite a bit harder to know if the soil is ready for a drink or not, and getting the watering wrong would spell disaster for your little guy. There is one way around this, but in truth it's a solution that slows me down when watering my 200 strong collection. Yep, you guessed it, the humble moisture meter. No stone is too big for this little device. It's just less convenient, I guess. So I pointed out this guy as someone who is probably going to be mad at me in a few weeks' time due to the spot I've recently moved into. This is my Peperomia obtusifolia, and there is something different about him that you might not immediately notice. Something that only 2 or 3 of my plants have. Yeah, he's sat directly in its decorative part. There's no plastic pot buffer, which is something I always recommend in my videos. Now, I've been lucky with this guy because he's not really thrown a tantrum, but he's hardly firing on all cylinders either. The danger here is again overwatering. I've sacrificed form over function. I mean, those plastic pots are pretty ugly, aren't they? And even when plonked into a ceramic pot, they're still visible. But this slight ugliness is much preferable to a dead plant, I reckon, which is why I've only got 2 or 3 like this, as some kind of experiment to keep going for research purposes. Your watering needs to be on point. Too much and swamp settings are dialed to 11. Too little and Mr. Plant will be begging for more in vain. The moisture meter would certainly help, but that's slowing everything down again. So earlier, I brought your attention to Jim and how I couldn't find room for him near a window. We can move that story on a little by introducing you to Bob, the bird of paradise. This guy's a new addition for the household, and I didn't really know much about his kind when I got him. So I asked a couple of planty friends and they told me just how much they crave the sun. Without enough sun, I'd have no chance of seeing a beautiful flower, and the beautiful flower was the primary reason for getting one. So right up against this south-facing window he went. But the exact problem I was worried about with Jim has been happening to Bob. He's getting knocked about left, right and centre, and it's doing untold damage to the leaves. It doesn't help that he's leaning like a smooth criminal, of course, which is why he's now pressed up against the window after I turned him around, but I'm still knocking into his stragglers when doing my watering round. So what do I do? Well, we're getting into Goldilocks territory here, aren't we? But we need a spot that has the perfect amount of light, is not too close to anything else in the house, and is in no danger of getting knocked about by humans or animals. So I guess I'll just leave him be, yeah? At least he's not in a major thoroughfare like this poor lass. I mentioned my large, dark and gloomy shelf above my TV and how it was a problem for light, but it's also a problem for watering. It kind of goes back to the old adage of out of sight, out of mind. When I'm doing my watering rounds, I almost always forget about this shelf. And when I do remember it, I get that sinking feeling in my stomach. Off the shelf, every single plant must come to first check the soil and then to water. And then there's the risk of water going all over my TV causing a fire. Starting to sound like I regret this shelf, isn't it? In truth, I love it, but you just need to know what you're getting yourself in for with something like this. If watering a plant is annoying because of where he lives, then you're much less likely to keep it up. I often think to myself, they were watered last month, they're probably fine, before coming to my senses and doing my duties. You're probably familiar with the houseplant community's obsession with humidity. Don't worry, this isn't an attack on misting, not in this video anyway. Now, I generally don't buy into the whole we need to increase humidity to 100% to have happy plants, because I reckon consistency is more important. The rise and fall of air humidity when we mist or have a humidifier nearby probably does more damage than just letting the little guy just get used to your house. But there is a problem we need to be careful about, especially during winter. This is Mrs. Sheffield's office, and she's brightening it up with a collection of cacti on her windowsill. This is a great spot because this window faces southwest, so lots of sun for the cacti to lap up. But there is a problem. Yep, that radiator parked right underneath. Radiators under windowsills are a nightmare for plants, which is a nightmare for us plant parents because they're obviously the best spots in terms of light. Now Mrs. Sheffield might just get away with this because they are arid dwelling cacti. If things were more tropical, then I'd have to intervene for the sake of the plants. Hot air blasting your tropical friends twice a day all winter will not make a happy household, trust me. Try and stick to cacti if you must, but do keep an eye on them. If you're a long-time subscriber to the channel, then you'll know that I love creating these. This is a mixed pothos planter that I made well over a year ago, and I reckon it looks marvellous. So much so that I made another one this year. Now this isn't anything new, folks have been doing this for millennia, but there is one principle that we must follow, and that's to use the right plants. Sounds obvious, I know, but if we're only beginners and aren't familiar with what certain plants want, then we can get into a muddle. This new planter I made is full of pothos and philodendron. These are tropicals that have basically the same needs. If I was to stick, say, a jade in here, then things would go south quick. The lighting, the watering, the rate of growth, it's all different, so at least one would end up being grumpy. I use jade and pothos as an extreme example, but it would equally apply to a mix of pothos and calathea. Stick to plants in the same family is a safe bet. A couple of years ago I made this. For some reason I've still got it, but my gosh, what a mess it looks. Even succulents and jades don't work well together apparently. The growth rate is just too different. Plants can be a bit of a menace if we're not careful. They excrete juices, wreak havoc with the airflow, and make a mess all on the floor. And if we're not careful, they also do things like this. I was shocked when I found this, and it's all because this new pot I got is not glazed at the bottom. There is a nifty way around this that I'll go over in the video over here, so click to watch and I'll see you there.